their memory. So l'chaim, they're holy souls, kadoshim, who were murdered for being Jews. And tonight we're going to discuss a little bit what we can learn from these people and what their death can inspire us in our life. So l'chaim. We're going to start with a bit of current affairs and segue into the parsha. The synagogue, which they were killed in, was called the Tree of Life, and it's been on my head the whole week, and I imagine a lot of us here have been thinking about it a lot. And something that's constantly been ringing in my head is this juxtaposition between death and life, the Tree of Life, and yet such horrific death takes place in it. And more than just a cute little wordplay, it's actually even a theological question that's been bothering me. The Tree of Life, which is the name of the synagogue, is taken from the Torah as a description for Torah. Eitz chayim hi lamachazikim ba. We say it is a tree of life for those that hold on to it. Those that hold on to the Torah, that are committed to its values. Torah provides life. And here we had on Shabbat morning people coming to commit themselves, coming to services, and instead of getting life, they're faced with death. Now, of course, we believe in free choice and human will, and their death was because some crazy person was motivated with hate to kill them. But at the end of the day, how do we reconcile the notion of Torah being called a tree of life with this? And unfortunately, as Jews, we have a long history of people being killed for their Judaism. Long history of death just because we're Jewish, just because we have the Torah. And so what does it mean that we call the Torah a tree of life? Any ideas?
Well, supposedly it's a guide to how one conducts one's life, and that if one follows it, in theory, one would have a good, pleasant, meaningful, important life.
Okay, so tree of life means not necessarily living versus dead, but tree that can give you a meaningful life.
A meaningful life, yes.
Okay? Anyone else?
It's always growing.
Okay, so just like a tree always grows, the Torah is always growing, and or a person is always growing when they have the Torah. So here I want to segue into the parsha, and we'll get back to this at the end. The same irony exists also in the parsha this week. This week's Torah portion is called Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah. And if we look at the themes that it discusses, they all reflect the end of Sarah's life, or Sarah's death. So the portion starts off with Sarah being dead. Sarah dying, and Abraham is looking for a place to bury her. And finally he stumbles upon Hebron, and he asks the people there, where can I find a burial plot? They point him in the direction of Ephron, who owns this big chunk of land, which Avram ends up buying from him. We now know to be Ma'aras HaMachpelah, the cave of doubles, and that's where Sarah was buried, Abraham was later buried there, and the rest of the forefathers. That's the first story we have in the parasha. This story obviously clearly reflects Sarah's death. It's about her dying, about her being buried and interred, and Abraham eulogizing her. Then the portion goes on and speaks about Sarah had a son, Yitzchak, who is now an eligible bachelor, time to marry him off. So Abraham sends his servant Eliezer, says, go find a wife for Yitzchak. And he sends him to his hometown, to where his family is, says there's good people there, you'll find a girl. And Eliezer goes to the well, where all good matches happen. And he makes his deal with God. He says, God, how am I going to find a girl? How do I know who's a good person? I don't know who's a good match for Yitzchak. Here's the deal. I'm going to ask someone to give me some water. Whoever offers water for my camels as well, there must be a kind person. That shows they have good character. They're going to be a good fit for Yitzchak. And no sooner did he say that, a girl came over to him and says, here's some water for you and your camels. He says, huh, amazing, look at that. Sorry. And he asks her what her name is. Turns out she's a cousin of Yitzchak, perfect. He invites her over to her house, and he brings her back home to his master's home, Abraham, as a wife for Yitzchak. Again, if you look at that story, what's it about? It's about Yitzchak developing, moving on from his mother's death. Right? Until then, who was the woman in his life? His mother. He lived at home, and his mother was the female figure. After Sarah's death, he was lacking that in his life. He thought, now it's time to get married. And so finding a match, finding Rivka, was his way of being consoled for his mother's death. Moving on from Sarah. So not only is it about Sarah dying, about already moving on from the grief, moving on from the mourning, moving forward. And then, at the end of the parsha, if Abraham remarries to a woman named Keturah and has children with her, clearly, totally moves on. He's remarried, he's gone further in life, he's moved on with life. In fact, according to the Midrash, this woman Keturah was actually Hagar, his original wife who Sarah had sent out of the home. She was upset about how Hagar and her son Yishmael being a bad influence, and Avram now brings her back in. So not only has he moved on from Sarah, it seems he's totally forgotten about her, couldn't care about what she would or wouldn't want, and he's moving on with his life how he sees fit. So the parasha from beginning to end is one long narrative about how Sarah is dead, gone from the world, and her children, her husband, the world has moved on from her life. Yet, the name it's described as Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, and then the title usually would reflect the content. So why would a portion which deals with Sarah's death and the aftermath of that be called the life of Sarah? Any ideas? Yeah.
Well, usually magnanimous people, sometimes when they die, their life is amplified. Because that's when people say, wow, look what that person did. So it's sort of the legacy of that virtuous or magnanimous life is amplified by the death.
Okay.
Or
So
the cycle of life is present in all of us, and that's all I got.
the cycle of life. Sarah's life or our life?
Well, her life, and it's just sort of a microcosm of all of us in some way.
Okay.
Well, Isaac, what happened with him is the continuation of Sarah's life. If Sarah hadn't lived, there wouldn't have been an Isaac. So it was because of her virtuous life that she had this wonderful son who now himself is moving on and continuing the line. So in that way, it's the life of Sarah. It's like it's what she did with her life that's continuing.
Okay. So I think it's saying similar things, that during a person's lifetime, we don't always appreciate what they bring to the table, what they contribute. And often after they're gone, and we see what they've achieved, we can truly realize how great this person has been. Or, as you said, how we see the fruits of their labor. Yeah. Yitzchak has developed into a fine young man, and he is Sarah's son, so it all gets credited back to her. Okay, good answers. We can finish here. So I want to expound on that a little bit and really get to the crux of it. What is life? when we say we're living life, and so obviously we can define life by a biological definition. Breathing, our heart is pumping, our organs are functioning. We're alive. I'm here. But then we use the term life also in a much broader context, right? Like, go get a life. What does that mean?
Do something.
Do something with your life, right? Be productive. So there, life is used as something you're doing productive, right? And there are different ways you can use the word life and what it means to live. For the most part, we live life in a sort of survival mode, right? We get up in the morning and we go about our day. Most of our day is spent thinking about what I need to do in order to get to the next step. I need to get a job so that I can have money so I can survive for tomorrow. And I need to do this in my job so I can keep my job for tomorrow. So every day I'm just trying to do what I need to do to make tomorrow work. And the next day I'm doing what I need to do to make the next day work. We're on this never-ending hamster wheel, just trying to get by. And some of us get by better than others, and some days we get by better than others. But we almost like just trying to beat the clock, just trying to survive, hang on to life. And even if not like practically that way, even if life's okay and we're relaxed, what are we focusing on? We're mostly focusing on what do I need to do now so that I would have something later. And so we get jobs and work long hours so we can invest money in our future, invest money in our kids. We spend time investing in our health so that when I'm older, I will be healthy. I will have a longer, more productive life. We're always just trying to do something for the next moment. Always trying to live now so I can have something later. And what ends up happening is you never have the now. Because when that later comes around, you're focused on the next later. And the next later, the next later. And so what are all those moments working towards? When's that one grand moment that everything's a build-up for? Your last moment of life, on your deathbed? Oh, it was all for this. That, my whole life is crystallized in that moment. And even then you're thinking about surviving, or you're thinking about what you could have done with your time.
Or the afterlife.
Or the afterlife.
You're still doing it.
And so, that's the way most of us live, right? And when we look back, we tend to have regrets, right? There was this book, I forgot her name, she was a palliative care nurse. And she wrote a book about the top regrets she hears from patients she deals with. And number one on the list was not spending enough time with loved ones. And all of most of them fit into that sort of category. I don't think anyone on that list was like didn't make enough money or didn't get enough fame or credit in life. Because we're chasing things we think are important, but then we look back, we realize in hindsight what was really important. And we wish we could live life again. I've never been there. But even in our current stage, right? You look back the past year, the past 5 years, think, you know what, I wish I would have this time again. I would do it different. And if you think about what you would do different, it's amazing because that can really guide you into how you can do that different now. But we don't tend to do that often. Instead, in the past, we think how I could have done it better. In the more present moment in the future, I continue doing it the way I always did. Because that's the type of creatures that we are. David Brooks is a New York Times columnist. And he wrote a book, I think it's called The Road to Character. And he has, in that book he speaks about, he quotes it from a Jewish source, from a Soloveitchik, who wrote a book, The Lonely Man of Faith. And there Soloveitchik takes the beginning of Genesis with his two descriptions of the creation of man. And he says, if you look at those two descriptions, it's referring to different, really, ideals of people, which he calls Adam 1 and Adam 2. And he says, this is the constant struggle which we're all living with. Adam 1 and Adam 2, the two sides of our being. One side of ourselves wants to conquer the world, wants to be successful, wants to do more, achieve more, get fame, get wealthy. We want to just be successful. We want to do what we can. The other side of ourselves is more internally focused. To be honest people, humble, good character. Those things that won't get you anywhere in life. If anything, they can hinder. But it's what makes you real. It's the character which you want to achieve, who you want to be. And David Brooks called this the eulogy virtues versus the resume virtues. He said, the whole life of chasing a resume virtues. What else can I put in my resume? Right? And it's starting earlier and earlier. Now it's always, the preschool kids are going to a certain preschool so that they can get to a certain school, so they can get to a certain college, so they can get a job and make X amount of money. And so from that early age, they're being pressured. What's important in your life? What's going to make you successful? How are you going to make it? What can you do now to achieve and conquer new heights? And we don't focus on what's the Adam, be a better person, build character, be humble, honest, integrity. These are things which are, even if we do, emphasize them, they're beautiful things to have. But are they what we're really going to invest our energies and our money in? No. What good do you get out of them? They're nice. They're nice additions to your character. But are they worth investing your childhood? Are they worth investing everything? No. They're nice things to have. But the way David Brooks says it, at your eulogy, what do you want people to say? Your grades in school? The amount of money you have in your bank? No. So, obviously, we're not doing things for our eulogy, but what that brings out is, when you look back at life, what are you going to be remembered for? Who do you want to be? And that's the regrets we have. So, when we live through life, we have to focus on what life is. There's a Hasidic saying, the paraphrase basically says, are you alive because you're alive, or because you haven't been killed yet? Are we living life just because we're here? Or is there some reason we are alive, something motivating me to live, something that I'm living with? So if we go back to Sarah, she was a very special character. The first Jewish woman. And it's not just, although that's definitely true, that we see that her child went in her ways, Yitzchak was growing up, that's her legacy she left behind, and so she's still alive, or that's her life that we can recognize. I think it's much more than, much deeper than that. These two modes of life can really be attributed to body and soul. Our bodies are physical selves. It's the ego, the selfish part of us. It has functions and needs. On a most basic level, we need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to take care of our health. But then we have certain drives which we want to fulfill. We have tendencies which drive us, and vices which drive a lot of our behavior. That's the body. That's the sort of what we call the regular human self. Then there's the soul, something which is, we can't explain, it's our consciousness, something deep within us that strives for more, yearns for something deeper, isn't satisfied with just living through life on a shallow way, wants to find meaning, wants to transcend the regular flow of life. often we're not sure even where it's coming from. Why aren't I happy with what I have? And you have people that are successful and wealthy and have everything going for them, healthy, but there's some dissatisfaction eating at them, and they may not even be able to explain why. But it's because they haven't nourished their soul. There's part of them, a very deep part of them, and perhaps the essential them, that is poor, that's unhealthy, that hasn't found any expression. And this lends to a dissatisfaction in life, and disbalance, they're unbalanced. So the question of life is how to balance the body and the soul. How to, of course, we take care of our body. We need to live as human beings. We have to have social interactions. We have to live a good life, be happy. We have to also find meaning. We have to also live a life that's going to be in sync with our values, that's going to connect us to something greater than ourselves, with God, with a mission far greater than ourselves. And for the most of us, and we're here tonight at Torah class, which means we recognize the soul. We want something deeper. But the question is, who is the real me? I have both sides to myself. Which one of them is me, and which one of them is something nice that I like doing? Which means, am I this regular person who has these visions of success and drive, and I also like being inspired. I also like finding meaning. It makes me feel wholesome and good. Or am I this soul? Am I this spirited person who lives for something deeper? But I also live through life as a regular person and have my job, my life, my social circles, whatever it may be. Who am I? And the more spiritual a person is, the deeper their experience of soul, the more that is what they embody, is who they are. So the Zohar says something fascinating. It says that a tzaddik, which means the epitome of a soul person, someone who is totally, their life was lived as a soul person, never dies. Even once they pass on, they continue to exist in this world. Now, to some degree, we all continue to exist after we pass on. We believe the soul never dies. But even though our soul is eternal, during our lifetimes, we weren't only our soul. We were this fusion of body and soul. And so the soul lives on, but the me, who I was during my lifetime, has died. And so the way that's sort of visualized is that the soul lives on, but not here in this world. Because me, the presence of me in this world, who I was, is no longer here. Whereas someone who is during their lifetime lived this life of devoted to the spiritual consciousness of their soul, that's who they were during their lifetime. Their body was sort of just a vehicle they used to get around. Then even after they have passed on, that same spirit that they were during their lifetime exists after their lifetime. It's eternal. So, in that sense, the Talmud says Yaakov, our forefather, never died. And the same thing we say to the degree about Sarah. After her death, she was as alive as before. And the proof is the legacy she left behind. The impact she left behind. So, make this in a more practical way. Let's think for ourselves, is there anything we are devoting ourselves to right now that is going to live on after I'm around? Is there a cause or a mission or a project that I'm working on that I don't plan on it being done during my lifetime? It's something which is for the long term. For the most part, people don't think about these things. I think about myself. And it doesn't mean that it's a soul necessarily. It's a soul type behavior if you are, but the soul type behavior is something which is eternal. So if I'm devoting myself, for example, to make the world a brighter place, to fill the world with consciousness of God, that's something which is going to continue to exist well after I'm gone. If I'm devoting myself to my success, working up the ranks in my business, that's something which is only I benefit from. It's all about me. And if I'm gone, it's gone.
Except when you approach that daily life, like the way the Hasids do, you sanctify everything. The food you eat, the train you take, the structure you're in, it was built, when you're eating, someone drove the food, someone grew the olives in Morocco or, harvested them. So in that way, it could take that, it's never an all or nothing thing. You don't have to have just we need our bare essentials, but once we bring that into it, you're eating that sandwich, you're like, wow, the olives are from Morocco, the bread is from Sullivan Street, the driver came from Saugerties, and this guy got up, or this woman got up this early to bake that bread. All of a sudden, the worlds are melt, they're together. There's no there's no duality between body and soul, whether you're working for your bare essentials. It's like a confluence.
Absolutely, this is what we're getting at. Yes. So, till now I've presented that there's this two modes of living. Either your body or your soul. Or you're somewhere a balance, but they're countering each other. The vision of Torah and what Torah is trying to do for us, it was given to achieve in our lives as people in the world, is to allow us to synthesize these two things. That they shouldn't be two distinct options. And this is what Pete was saying, I think. Torah is a guidebook for life. So Judaism does not believe in leaving the world and becoming an ascetic and living in the mountaintops and meditating for years on end. That is antithetical to the Jewish mission. It's antithetical to Torah. Because although you may have soul, a soul on its own can't live, and a soul on its own is not achieving its mission. Why it was invested into a body, why it was brought into this world. And so the Torah mission, the Torah objective, is to be able to bring into our lives sanctity, to bring soul into everything we do. So not only in the moments I go to the synagogue and I pray, or I come to study, or I reflect and meditate, in those moments I'm nourishing my soul. And I have to go through the day, and so I just do what I need to do on the side for my body. That's not the intent. That's not what we're meant to be doing. Torah gives us a way to live every part of our life. And the mitzvahs are channels of bringing into the life we live, our material lives, our social lives, bringing soul into them, bringing kedusha, sanctity, into those areas of our life. And so, the goal of Torah is to create, first of all, in the person, this entire synthesis, that body and soul work hand in hand, and every need of the body is really a reflection of the soul. So the example you gave, you eat, it could be, well, you know what, I really don't want to eat because eating is just a body function. And I'm a spiritual person, but I'll eat because I have to survive. Or you eat, but you infuse this eating, I recognize I'm mindful about the food that I'm eating, and I realize I'm eating it because it gives me energy, and I know the nourishment that it's giving me is going to help me do good. And so I eat, but my eating is an eating which is all part of my spirit, all part of the life of soul that I'm never developing. There's no distinction between the two. And this is what it means to be alive. You're alive, which means every moment of your life is animated with purpose, with meaning. Every interaction you have with people is also infused with meaning, with purpose. Doesn't mean every interaction is going to be teaching someone Torah or discussing, deep secrets of mysticism. You could be talking about the weather, but you recognize that person as a human being who you're developing a relationship with. You realize there's a connection here, and you sense the depth of what you're doing. You're mindful in every moment of this being part of my experience in life, part of my way of living out a life that I'm meant to. Living, bringing God into the world through every interaction. And so, when we say, Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba, those that hold on to the Torah, it is a tree of life. Torah and Torah practice is what gives life to the world. It makes you alive. And what this does is it turns the perspective on its head. People often ask, the Judaism is a little too overwhelming. There's so many mitzvahs. It's like you're being pounded and hounded every moment of the day. What do I need to do next? And I can't do this, and I can't do that, and it's like crazy. It's dictating to me every step of my life. Leave me alone. Let me do my thing. You do you, I'll do me. Right? What does God want from us? But when we look at it this way, is God gave us directives how to live my life in a way that every moment I'm able to bring meaning to life. I'm able to live within my regular function of life, a real life, be alive. And that life is eternal, lives on forever. The depth of character you develop is eternal. The spiritual achievements which you achieve outlive you. And so every time you do something meaningful, every time you have a touch point with a mitzvah, every time you even do a favor for someone, that favor comes and goes. But what you've achieved, the humanity you've expressed, the kindness you've expressed, the godliness you've expressed in that moment is an everlasting achievement. Not just a legacy that they're going to say about you at your eulogy. Not that they'll say after you're dead, wow, this person was so great, look at all the things he did or she did. The actual accomplishment lives on. You've impacted the world in an everlasting way. So we read in the parasha all the stages of Sarah's death and burial, and then Yitzchak moving on. Not only are they all part of Sarah's legacy, but they all express her character. So if we look at each one of them, we'll see that they actually express something specific about her character. Sarah was, with Abraham, the ones to be promised Israel. But Sarah was always the more practical or particular, whereas Abraham was a universalist. Abraham was, his name meant the father of all nations. And he was trying to reach all of humanity, which is why Yishmael, who became the father of Arab nations, he wanted to keep him in his home. He felt this is all part of our whole spiritual family. He thought of a bigger picture. Sarah felt we have to zoom in. If this legacy we're creating, if this spiritual tradition which we are bringing to the world is to last, it has to be more focused. And she felt, put all her eggs in one basket, invest it all in Yitzchak, and we have to cut off ties, so to speak, with Ishmael. So she was the particularist, and Avram was the universalist. When Avram comes to buy land for Sarah, for burial place, it's the first chunk of land, first piece of land that is Jewish owned in Israel. And it zooms in on this particular piece of land for a particular people. Hebron belongs to the Jews, belongs to Abraham and his descendants. He bought it for money. The next story, we find the same thing. When Yitzchak needs to get married, Abraham tells Eliezer, don't marry a woman from here, from Canaan. They're up to all kinds of spiritually unhealthy practices. Go to my family. And Eliezer tells him, by the way, I have a daughter. Just want to mention that. He wanted his daughter to marry Yitzchak, and Abraham said, no, it has to be from my family. That particular strain is the one that Yitzchak should marry in order to develop in a specific path. And so what we see here is that Sarah's influence, what she impacted, was having its results now. That Yitzchak, Abraham was even realizing that Yitzchak should continue in a very particular vein, marrying from the family and continue in this strand, instead of branching out and spreading the wealth beyond that. And then even when Avram gets remarried, it says he sent the children out of the house and all his inheritance only gave to Yitzchak. And so again, that's a reflection of Sarah's particularism, that Yitzchak should be the one full heir, full inheritor of Abraham. So what we're seeing is that her direct impact is being felt. Her influence continues to live on. And since that was who she was during her life, she embodied that spirit. So she was as present beyond her death as she was in her lifetime. And therefore, this parsha can be called Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. Her life, whether her body was alive or not, was irrelevant. What she lived for, who she was for real, that continued to live on. And that impact continued to be felt in all these stories.
What's the significance of Hagar re-entering when Sarah's gone? Because Sarah also had a role in vanquishing Hagar. And now she's gone, and I think that she was the one that said to Abraham, take Hagar, right? Also?
Yes.
So I mean, it's take him. All right, now beat it. Get out of here. And now she's gone. And that's another point of entry, because that's also very much her legacy. That someone that she invited, vanquished,
is being brought back in.
Is brought back in also.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that would be a reflection of what she lived for.
Maybe it's keeping the strain, keeping it contained somehow.
Okay.
So it's like a known quantity.
Instead of marrying someone else, marrying
Outside.
someone familiar.
And also maybe the universalistic thing is coming back. That was Abraham's true nature, was a universalist. And so when he took Hagar back, that was affirming his universalistic side. He did the practical, particular thing. That's done. Isaac's going to have a future. That's all taken care of. So now he can revisit his universal
Own
side.
calling. Okay. Interesting. So going back to how we started with these 11 souls, the victims who were killed in Pittsburgh. And just by virtue of them being who they were, killed for being Jewish, means that they're holy souls. And I was thinking throughout the week, what can we learn from them? And this is, I think, something important. When we face death, we live deeper lives. the Talmud says, live every moment as if it's your last. Imagine you had this threat of death looming over your head. You'd live very differently. Suddenly, all those meaningful things you want to achieve would be accelerated. You know, a couple weeks ago in the $1 billion lottery, so on the radio they're interviewing people. What will you do? Everyone that was interviewed, at least in the segment I listened to, all said, "I quit my job." Made me think, like, imagine, you know, none of them obviously want to be there, and this is true for a lot of people. So you quit your job, and what would you do? That's what I wanted to ask them. That's the question. If you had all the money in the world, what would you do? So most of us probably wouldn't use the time wisely and wouldn't use the money wisely either. But flip it around. If you have no time left in the world, what would you do? And I think we'd actually do a lot better. If we knew that this is, you know, unfortunate times coming to an end, suddenly all the things we wanted to achieve, everything meaningful in our life would take center stage and everything else would be meaningless. So we can live our entire lives that way. I'm not advocating anyone to quit their jobs. But the whole point is Torah is giving you the tools within your job to find that meaning, find that calling, and live by it. So yes, in a physical sense, it's a tragedy, and it is a tragedy. People were killed. And of course, the souls live on. They live on. But what we can learn from them is that we're still here. And there's a void which their death leaves. And we can fill that void. If we live lives that are more meaningful, are more purposeful, if we hang on to that tree of life, then what they're now not able to achieve in this world, we can achieve. And if their death, unfortunately comes to that, but if their death is what makes us live that way, then they continue to live on. And so if we're inspired by their souls, and they're still alive.
And the doctor and the staff, I mean, they talk about living Torah. That was like, I mean, forget it. They took it to the outer limits.
Saying treating this guy.
Did you hear the doctor? I mean, he had to treat
patients.
He had to treat the guy that committed the abominable
Right.
act.
He was also the head of the hospital.
And he was also the head of the hospital,
He's
and
the
the
one
And
nurse
Jewish.
and staff, and they were
Yeah.
all Jewish.
Right.
And they had to treat him while he was
The first three
ranting.
people he came into contact with were all Jewish.
right. And what the doctor said, he said, I have to treat him. I'm a doctor. And, I mean, you see that.
Yeah.
Am I going to hold on to anger?
That's humanity at its finest.
I mean, that's the light.
Yeah, it
You
is.
talk about tipping the balance, you know. So that's you know, it amplifies that. They're already sanctified with that.
Absolutely.
That was the kickoff. You know, so now we could take the ball, or
And run.
Or do I still think about Maya Lansky and some alternatives, you know, which really never work in the end, you know.
Not to minimize or take away from the tragedy that occurred, but that could be said for any person that dies. You know, any relative, any person you know, it's sort of the same concepts.
Yeah, the same idea rings true, that true life never dies. I mean, anything that's, you know, this is maybe a deep concept, but anything that's truly exists can't cease to exist. Because if it ceases to exist, it means it never truly was. It always had some sort of limitation of how much it was. Take, for example, a mathematical equation, which is a truth. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Can never die. It's always going to be. It just is. It's true. Right? Truth can never finish being true, or else it was never true in the first place. So essentially, life's the same way. Anything that's truly alive is forever alive. And anything that expires means its lifetime, even during his life, was temporary. Right? So we all have a soul. And so after death, everyone continues to live on to a certain degree. Those that, the more meaning we infuse in our lives, the more we live that, the more our presence is still here in the world once we're gone. And the more impact we have, the more our soul is felt there. And so these people, the impact their death has had is huge.
Yeah.
The unity they've brought to the world. I mean, this also obviously doesn't minimize or take away from the tragedy and how terrible it is. But the good that has been done now, or the awareness that's become, and all the mitzvahs that are being done, and the prayers that are being said, and the communities coming together, that is the presence of their soul in this world. That is their life that continues to live on. Yeah.
I just want to clarify what you said. So you're saying because they were killed, that automatically makes them holy?
Killed for being Jewish. Yeah.
Is that a halachic explanation or like a?
I can't tell you offhand the source for it. Definitely in our tradition, Jewish tradition, going back as long as I know, people who were killed for being Jewish were termed kadoshim, holy martyrs, and it nothing didn't necessarily reflect the life they lived. I don't know though. I can't tell you where that comes from or the source.
A colleague of mine a few years ago, his sister had a terminal illness, and he's an Orthodox guy, and his whole family is, and they were reading Tehillim, and there was sort of like a whole program of who was reading Tehillim and how it was being given over. So as it turned out, at the funeral, one of the persons who gave the eulogy, her brother, was mentioning that during the course of this time, there was something like 47,000 mitzvot, related to that, and it was just like how this one person was able to sort of bring that, make that happen,
Yeah, so that's an achievement that person has done, which lives on. Yeah.
These shootings did have an effect on me. First, I was very upset to hear them, but I'm an activist, and I'm very involved in the elections. And in fact, on Saturday, I was out of state, and they actually canceled the canvass because it was in Pennsylvania. And I was toying with the idea, because I'm doing a lot of work. I was supposed to have worked on Sunday as well, in Staten Island. And I think, I'm tired, I've been doing this a long time, maybe I'll take the day off. And I said, no, these people were murdered by the power of hate and intolerance. And if I'm true to what I believe in, and I think what I'm doing is against hate and intolerance, I have to get out there. I've got to go out and do what I said I was going to do. Otherwise, I'm not that serious. And if anything, the killing motivated me to do something that I might not have done in a good way.
So that's their
And it's
soul.
also why I'm here tonight.
Presence.
It was a little hard for me to get here, but I figured I wanted to do something Jewish, specifically Jewish, and I came here.
So you're the proof that they're still alive. We're all their life. We are the bearers of their life.
Yeah.
Our bodies are the vehicles for their soul once their bodies can no longer be. But on a personal level, a practical level, what we can take away from this conversation, and of course, it's an overall worldview, but we can live life the same way we're living now. Doesn't take drastic change. Doesn't take quitting your job. Doesn't take moving somewhere far away. Doesn't take overturning your kitchen. It may include some of those things sometimes. It may not. But it takes being mindful as often as you can of why you're here. Mindful of what I want from my life. What's really important to me. And how am I going to set my life up to make those things priorities. The real life, the eternal life, the internal life, the tree of life that Torah is meant to be giving us, how can I live more by that? Focus more on those really meaningful things rather than those fleeting, catchy things which we usually do. And that, there's no winning or losing in that. It's every moment's a moment. So it's not just like either I'm doing it or I'm not, or I'm getting better at it or worse, which could be, but it's right now I did it. Right now, this moment, I'm mindful of that and I'm living in this moment with that knowledge. I'm doing something towards that. I'm doing something meaningful in this world. I'm bringing my soul into what I'm doing. That moment was an eternal moment. Even if the moment before was not, and the moment afterwards is not. That moment lives on for eternity.
It's interesting that the older one gets, the more they become in sync with that way of thinking. It's like as we get more in touch with our mortality, it becomes more relevant to us to be mindful and be in the present. And
You would know about that from experience. You're saying, third.
right, of course.
No, it's an unfortunate thing that we wait till it's too late to start thinking how we should have lived, right? So, if there's one takeaway from tonight, it's A, be mindful of what you really want and how you're going to get that in your life. Don't wait till it's too late. But B, create moments of eternity. Every mitzvah we do, Torah gives us a guideline of how we can achieve this. The mitzvahs are touch points with eternity, are ways of infusing the soul into our body, into the world. And so each mitzvah that we do is another opportunity to create that eternal moment. So if we each commit to one mitzvah in honor of these 11 souls, not only will we create for our own self an eternity, we will be part of creating their eternity as well. So something to think about. One mitzvah could be a one-time thing, an ongoing thing. One mitzvah which we're going to do to bring that tree of life, continue the life for these people that can no longer live it in their bodies.
I have a suggestion. Give to Highest. I already did that. Highest, someone sent me a thing, and I sent it all on my Facebook page. I copied it and shared it with others that this is the organization to give to at this moment.
Facebook posts don't count as mitzvahs, though.
But I gave
Everything
the
else.
money.
No, you're right,
I
right.
gave the money, and then I sent it to all my friends,
No.
asking them to give money.
What organization?
The Hebrew Immigrant Assistance Society. That's the one that that Nazi was the one that that's why he shot those people because of Highest. And
But if you go to their website, they have a beautiful, I was watching it, they have like a little video that explains what they do. It's like a cartoon video, and I watched it and I was just crying. I mean, they've been around for 100
Yeah.
100 and some years.
years or something. But yeah, it's an amazing organization.
Great.
So that's good tzedakah to give to them.
I
Yeah.
was thinking, with everything going on now, it's very volatile. Well, for me, and the Rebbe said, paraphrasing, that wherever the darkest veil is, the most light is at hand. Because it reminds me when I used to work nights, Michelle had to buy blackout shades because the sun is so powerful at noon that it was waking me up with the regular shades. So for so much light at noon, we needed the darkest shade. And right now, I mean, I've been battling the beast. And the one thing, I always try to keep that in mind, and maybe that's what Hagar is. I'm not saying she's the beast, but that even the moments when, like the Alter Rebbe said, it's a battle of two cities within. I haven't experienced a battle like this in a long time. I'm usually like soulful, flying, iron working, writing songs. I don't waste any time. Don't waste my time. TV, nothing. Family, food, music, community. And now I'm buried deep. I've been battling hate and anger and battling it, right? But the one thing I learned, like, you know, the Rebbe said, you know, if you can, do a mitzvah to try to bring light at that moment. But every night, I'm thanking the battle. Because I'm like in a match right now. It's like a boxing match. Except it's not physical, it's more insidious. It's the battle of the two cities within. And in a way, I know this is what engenders more growth. Because in my life, it always happens. I guess that's aging, we learn that. So I'm getting ready, as the Rebbe would say, every dissension is the preparation for an ascension. And for that, I'm grateful. That's the Torah, you know, and maybe that's what Hagar's re-entry is. Maybe that's because she was one that was vanquished, right? And maybe I can't disown that, where I'm at right now. You know, what do they say? It's the battle with the Girgashites. You know, your thoughts, words, and deeds. Like once the thoughts and words become enacted, that's the Girgashites. That represents that battle with that tribe. It's done. You've already turned your thoughts and words into the deed that was engendered by the Yetzer Hara. So I've been curtailing that at this point. And then, so maybe that's Hagar's connection.
Possibly. Either we should all live long lives, but we should live those lives. They should be well lived. We should have every moment of life should be lived. And deeply lived. As souls in bodies. And we pray for the day when death will no longer be a reality in the world. Times of Mashiach, all evil, including death, will be eradicated. Maybe the medical advancements will help us. And life will be lived to its fullest every moment. So eternal life will be not only of the soul, but eternal of the body as well.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. L'chaim.
Chaim.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Rabbi
you.
Menashe.
This is a good place to be tonight. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Happy you can make it. Same time, same
you.
place next week.
This will be my last for a while, but I
Okay.
was still